Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good. You can hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm not sure how to share the video though.
This is all new to me, so
It's all good. Happy Sunday.
yeah. I mean, I guess. I mean, it's near the end of Sunday, so I don't know how happy it is.
Where are you logging in from?
The Midwest, so Minnesota is
Oh,
where I'm
okay.
from.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Uh, yeah, where's the button for share video gone?
I don't know. I tried to share it and it didn't work, so I have no idea what happened to that link. Let me see if I try this, if that'll work. Nope, it's still just wanting me to like DM it to people, so
Maybe once you're in, it's automatically sharing.
I'm honestly not sure.
This is
Well,
my first one of these, so
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't really know what.
Well, yeah. Let's get started. We've got people joining in. So, um, hello and welcome everyone. This is the 25th Pass the Baton interview for Word Improv writers. For those who don't know, it's a community of writers united by a passion for writing and for the Word Improv challenges. What are the challenges? They're devised by an uncanny logophile called Word Sleuth on Instagram. He provides a set of words for each challenge, and writers need to use these words in a story, which could be a tale, a poem, a skit, a script, or whatever. There's no minimum word limit or maximum word limit. But the words provided are quite uncommon, sometimes rare, and sometimes truly archaic, and that's where the challenge lies. But participants get to learn new words and while practicing the writing skills. The writers who participate can also get invited to be in this Pass the Baton series of interviews where contributors get to interview one another and talk about the community and the audience and about themselves and their work. My name's Emma Batten. I'm not to be confused with Pass the Baton, so we'll say Pass the Baton. I'm an author and screenwriter in Sydney, Australia, and I'm joined today by Catherine Nesbitt, an author from Phoenix, Arizona. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
And today we're talking to Mila Vilimirovic from Minnesota. Hello, Mila. How are you today?
Good. Excited that you were able to say my last name right. So well done.
So I get 5 stars already. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So let me tell the audience about Mila first. Mila's an author of a fantasy novel, Oriana's Legacy, the first in her series called The Crystallic Chronicles. Mila says that reading has always been part of her life. She always had a strong fascination with fiction and loved connecting with the characters in these books. And throughout her life, she wrote her own stories, but despite her passion, she never felt like her stories were worth reading. Now, I'm sure that's something that we can all relate to, something this whole community has in common, the old imposter syndrome, am I good enough? But when Mila left her job as a science educator, I think it was a biology teacher, is that right?
Yes, it was. High
That's
school.
that's when she decided to take her dream seriously and she self-published Oriana's Legacy. Now, we'll talk about Oriana's Legacy later, but let's first talk about the Word Sleuth community and the Word Improv challenges. How did you discover Word Improv?
I was actually just chilling on Instagram and I got a request to come take a look, and I was like, yes, I would love to. I've been actually wanting to join a writing community ever since I got on Instagram because I think talking with other authors and writers is the best. And so I also love that a part of it was this improv challenge with these words, because I think it's just amazing having to create stories from random things. I've done it before with music and even lines from stories. So having these words and trying to create something out of them is really exciting.
But
And also,
they're
yeah,
not ordinary words, are they?
no, they're not, which makes it even more fun and challenging. But that's good. I always love a challenge. So And when you actually are able to create something with these words, it makes you feel even better.
And so what's your approach when how many have you done?
So far, I've only been able to tackle one because when I joined, I had just started getting ready to debut my book, and so I was concentrating on that. But I have done one, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that I was able to write something. I was really worried. I am, like I said, I wrote a novel, so I'm really good at writing long stories, and I was like, I really need to make this short, not 10 pages, which is usually what I do.
Yeah. Catherine, what do you enjoy about the Word Improv Challenges?
So Vlad was like, do all these things to prepare for what I refer to as Word Sleuth Olympics. I think it's going to be on like the CMX platform in a couple weeks. So I've been busy preparing that. I also tutor an 8-year-old boy on Thursdays. So a lot of that fills up my time.
All right. Well, let's get into one of Mila's Word Improv stories. This is from the very first challenge, isn't it? The very first one that you did. The words were porcine, inscrutable, apace, cavort, prowess, fusillade, megalomania, ethology, and inimitable. And that's right. So the Word Improvers, the first 7 challenges by Word Sleuth had 9 words each rather than the customary 6 we get today, which is a lot easier. 9 words was, I can understand why it dropped down a little bit. It's probably a little challenging. And also, you know, it makes the stories end up being quite long to try and fit in all 9 words in some kind of way. The trick, obviously, is to embed those words. They don't stand out. So, Mila, would you like to read your story for us, or a part of it if it's going to take too long?
Sure. I guess I'll read a little bit because it is a page and a half, and I don't know if I'm going to do that whole thing. But I'll start with the beginning. Jerry was like every other ordinary person, except he did not think that way. He believed he was inimitable, especially when he played video games. Though his prowess in gaming was quite inscrutable, it was also his downfall. All his time went to honing his skills, and soon he forwent his relationships with his families and friends. Most days you would find him sinking deeper and deeper into his couch as his eyes stayed glued to the screen. Until one day it all changed. There was a knock at his door, but he ignored it. The knock turned into pleas from an elderly woman. She begged him to help. My husband has been in a terrible accident. Please help me, she wailed. The old lady continued to pound at the door and plead for assistance. But good old Jerry ignored her request and responded, get a phone and just bother someone else. And they have police for a reason, old lady. Get lost. It was that last remark when the door burst from its hinges. There no longer stood an old lady, but a gleaming, beautiful woman. She even had wings that she used to gracefully glide over to the couch with Jerry, who sat jaw agape. That beautiful woman, or perhaps fairy, just shook her head at Jerry. It's time you learned about your true self, my dear man. With a swing of her hands, Jerry became a pig. Well, sort of. The fairy-like woman gave him porcine features, pinkish skin, short flat snout, floppy ears, and even a curly pink tail. Jerry let out a sorrowful squeal. The fairy began to disappear in shimmering mist, but before she was gone completely, she whispered, now it's time for you to discover yourself. And then she was gone, leaving Jerry with his piggy self. So there is more, but I don't know. We want to spend all the time reading the story.
That's probably about, what, a third or a quarter of it, and we managed to get in porcine, inscrutable, prowess, and inimitable, I think. Mm-hmm. So four of the 9 words, half the words in maybe a third of the story. Not bad.
I probably was surprised I was able to get them all in.
So tell us, how did you start to use those challenge words correctly? So did you start writing, or did you see a connection between some of the words that sparked an idea?
So I actually wrote the words down first, and then I just like looked them over, and then there was one word that just stuck out to me, and I don't know why, but it was porcine. I don't know if it was because I work right now creating professional development for veterinarians. So,
Ah,
and it's with a lot of it's with pigs right now. So my mind just was, oh, porcine. And it just went from there. And I started, I don't know, Beauty and the Beast came to me. And then I don't know if anyone knows Porco Rosso, which is a really great film by Hayao Miyazaki, if anyone's interested. But those two stories kind of just came together, and I started going from there.
fabulous, fabulous. So, like many authors have different methodologies to writing. I mean, Greta Gerwig writes these incredibly long drafts. She doesn't even know how long she spends on the draft, but ends up with hundreds and hundreds of pages, and then spends a real time editing it down. David Lynch talks about getting a stack of palm cards, little 3 by 5 inch cards, and on each card he writes one scene. And when he's filled up 70 cards, he says he's got a story. 70 scenes, 70 stories. Aaron Sorkin on the other end of the spectrum, he talks about having 6 to 8 showers a day when he's writing, because if the writing's going bad, he stops, has a shower, gets dressed in a new outfit, and starts his day again. And on bad days, that could be 8 times. Do you have a particular approach to your writing?
Yeah, I actually, what I do is I have these journals that I write in, and I'll write or I'll draw. I'm not a good drawer, but I try. But I write and I draw, and I just kind of seems to flow out of me. I had one person ask me, like, is it like you see like a film in your head? And I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm actually watching something in my head, and I'm just trying to write it down into my journal. And the reason why I handwrite it is because I actually go slower, and so I can think it through more versus typing it. I go too fast.
Yep.
So I leave that for like my editing phase. But I will admit, showers are helpful. I don't know what it is. Or folding laundry. Like, those are with my stories. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to write this down.
Well, there's a Japanese inventor, and I can't remember his name, but he's had like hundreds and hundreds of inventions to his name. He believes that running water releases ions into the air that you breathe in, and it charges your brain and so forth. So he has these ideas in water, to the point where he even wears weighted boots and jumps in a swimming pool with an underwater graph tablet to come up with these ideas until he's at the point of drowning. Mental. I mean, where do ideas come from? You talked about you just start writing and you imagine a movie. I mean, Jordan Peele talks about how people should just write their favorite movie that they've not seen yet. Don't worry about if it's going to be made or not. Just write it for yourself. And after that, you worry about how you're going to sell it to the world. It sounds like it's the kind of approach you do of, I've got an idea, and I'm going to just start writing it, and it's going to flesh itself out, and it's for me, and if it's good, then I'll see what I can do with it.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what I hope for when I'm writing it down. It's also very calming. It's like an escape, too, when you're having a bad day, just sometimes being like, what's my character doing right now? Let me write it down and escape for a little bit.
So, I mean, with you talk about your love of reading and immersing yourself in the characters. I assume, therefore, that you try to create really immersive characters.
I try. I try.
Is there a process for that? Do you have side notes around each character, or do they just develop as the story's happening, and then you have in your edit you have to go back and make sure it all connects?
I would say that they develop as I go along. I start out with an idea how I want a character to be, and then as I go, I'm like, no, that's not right, and it changes as it goes. And after events that happen, I was like, this actually fits better for this person, and this shows that they're growing. And that's the big thing that I also want to do with my characters, because they're relatively young, so they're learning about themselves. Yeah. And so I want to make sure that they're learning from the experiences that they're having during the story, and it's not just they're staying stagnant the whole time. So they could change quite a bit throughout the series.
And the central narrative, do you know where it's going to end up? Or do you just know part of the way and you'll see where it takes itself?
So I know the ending. Like, I know what's going to happen for sure. It's getting there, which is a little bit, like I know bits and pieces, like little scenes that are happening, but then those little connecting bridges, that's where I have to work my way through. And also why I like to physically write it down, because that helps me slow down and try to make those connections. Because my big thing is plot holes. I don't.
Yep.
When I read a book, I'm like, what? Wait a second. That's not right. So that's why I like to slow down.
No one likes it, and no author wants their readers to do it, where you get to chapter 7 and you have to flick back to chapter 2 and go, hang on a minute, does that make sense? Because then you've lost them. They're no longer immersed in the narrative. They're trying to find flaws in it. They're trying to unpick it. So you need your narrative to have at least a degree of flawlessness. You can suspend some disbelief with fantasy.
And it's funny because I've had people, I had my brother actually, he read like the first chapter of my book before anything happened with it. And he was asking me questions and I was like, oh yeah, da, 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 da. Like I knew the answer to every single question he gave me. Like there wasn't a pause. I was like, I already know. I just need to write it down.
Yeah. When I'm writing, I know what the general gist of the storyline is going to be, and like you, I know what I want the big climactic moments to be, and then you got to navigate your path through those moments, and you will find a part where you're almost completed. You go, hang on, there's a big hole here, and you have to then rejig everything around, or again in your second edit, invent new pathways or new parallel storylines to help fill those holes and so forth, or just write stuff out. Sometimes what they say is kill your darlings. Sometimes you go, this is a really nice piece, but at the end of the day, I like it because it's its own little piece and it's not fitting the greater picture. Did you have lots of little darlings to kill?
Oh yeah, I have to admit I had a prologue that was very, very long, and I loved it. And everybody who read it looked at me and were like, I don't understand why this is here. I was just like, because it is supposed to be here. It belongs here. My editor at one point was just like, how about this? Let's make a compromise. Shrink it down to like 2.5 pages, and then put the rest that you wrote on your website. And I was like, fine. So I had to cut it down to, I think I did 2.5 pages. Hopefully I did. I can't even remember anymore. But yeah, that was hard for me to do that. Because I just felt it was so important.
Yeah, I like that idea of the little parts that you've taken out living separately from a published work. It's almost part of the world building, like you're creating your own canon, your own fan fiction of your own stuff.
Yeah, I didn't really even think about that. I was always afraid of, I don't like deleting things. So I really appreciate my editor on that point where she shared, just put it somewhere else where people can see. And then they can, if they like it, then they can actually try to read the book. So.
Excellent. I think you need to get back into some word sleuth challenges. You need to at least have a crack at one.
What was that? Sorry?
I think you need to get back into another word sleuth challenge. Have another word improv. Now there's 6 words. Now there's 6 words.
Sure. Yes, I am definitely going to be doing it now that I finally got this book out. I can finally do some of these word improv challenges. And I think it worked really well because I was doing a blog before where I would listen to a song and then make a story out of it. The problem with those is I made them super long. So these word improv challenges will be better so that it'll like push me to not write 10 pages.
When I'm doing the word improvs, I ensure that I'm doing no more than 200 words. I want them to be micro stories. Even bigger challenge of trying to get those 6 random words to fit within a micro story. And there's usually 1 or 2 that stands out too much for my liking. But generally you can get 4 or 5 of them to fit within 200 words nicely.
Yeah, I think I need some more practice.
Well, that's
my goal.
That's the beauty of the word improv, right? It's all about, again, practicing your writing skills. I'd also like to see, and I'm sure Vlad, the man behind the scenes, would like this, I'd like to see some of the authors who are going to the point of publishing books include some of these words in their books.
That is a good idea.
Make a little Easter eggs, to hunt.
I am writing my second one for this series, and I am almost done, but I can sneak some in.
Oh, it's pretty easy to go back and weave some of those, just a couple of those words in. Let them be some Easter egg hunts for this community.
Wow. And actually, a lot of these words would fit really well with where my story is, the time of my story. So
yes,
it could fit.
So let's talk about your story. So Oriana's Legacy. I actually ordered a copy of it. It did not arrive in time. It was supposed to be here 2 days ago. For anybody who's listening, that's not Mila's fault. That's Amazon failed me. So it's the story of a young warrior woman searching for the children who've been kidnapped from her village. And then during her quest, she discovers a magical myth that might be coming to life. And then it becomes up to her and a ragtag group of people she managed to put together from the land of Idillium to try and save the children and the entire kingdom. Let's talk some more about it. That's the 2-line version. What's the longer version? What can people expect to find?
So it's just essentially a coming of age story for Oriana. She's 17, and she doesn't fit in the village where she is right now. She's a fighter, she's a hunter, but she's a girl. And it's an old time period, so she doesn't fit well. Everybody looks at her like she's weird, and she doesn't fit. And so she decides, she's like, I'm going to leave. I'm done. Like, I'm done with this. I'm going to find my own people, my own place. Before she can, their village is attacked, and the children are taken by these group of people that the humans have been in war with. They're called the Rikaris. But she finds out that there's more to it behind it. And so she has to go with her master of arms, so the one that trained her, Master Agoji, and her actual foster brother, because she was part of a family in the village. His name's Bayo. And they travel throughout the kingdom, and they start discovering more and more information about children going missing throughout the entire kingdom. So it wasn't just her village, but everywhere. They go ask for help. Doesn't work out well, and they find themselves in a lot of predicaments as they go. But as they travel, they meet people that join with them to try to discover what's happening to the children. And as they meet these people, as they face these events, that's when they find out that the story, it's like a bedtime story that's told to them about the Crystallic Chronicles, that it's actually might be not so much a myth, but actually something that's been buried for a long time. And that the people that have stole the children are actually trying to find these crystals as well. And whoever finds them first is going to be the ones that can save the children. So that's what Oriana's trying to do.
Excellent. And you say it's the first book in the Crystallic Chronicles. How many books do you imagine there to be, or are you just going to keep going till you peter out?
No, I mean, it's when I first, so fun fact, I came up with this story like when I was in college, so a long time ago. And I was bored in my biology class because I was very good at biology. So, so I was like, I don't need to pay attention. And I started to draw a map in my notebook. And after I drew the map, I started to write the story. And when it started, I was like, I'm going to make this into a trilogy, and it's going to be awesome and epic. And then as I started writing it, I was like, this is taking me a really long time, and I don't think 3 books is going to work. And so after I started to plot it out, I was like, I think this is going to be about 7 books. So my hope is that it's 7. And that I can write them all, because the story's there, and I just need to get it down on paper. Yeah,
and look, if you're planning or even thinking that this is going to be 7 books in a series, it's quite long. You've got to make sure that central narrative has got enough going on that it keeps readers hooked. Otherwise, it just becomes a series of almost standalone books that just happen to feature the same characters. How are you making sure that central narrative is going to have at least 7 major incidents?
Well, what I've done for a few of at least the first 3 books. In each book, you are in search of the children. So that's the main thing, is finding these children. But it's also learning about the kingdom itself. So what is going on behind the kingdom? And so in each book, you meet a new race from the kingdom that helps or doesn't help Oriana try to find the crystals and save the children. So each book is related to that in some way. So there's always that goal. But then it's also Oriana trying to figure out how she fits into this and how she can actually take more of a leadership role, even though she doesn't really want to.
Okay. And what audience are you aiming this at? It sounds like middle grade to YA?
Yeah, so middle grade, like middle school, high school, so young adult fiction. But I always like to say it is for everyone. So
We all do. We want a bigger audience.
Yeah. Well, I would say I actually read more young adult fiction than I do adult fiction. I just enjoy the characters a lot more.
I do too, and I think in my interview in the last Pass-the-Baton, I talked how one of my favorite authors of all time was Terry Pratchett. The world building, the immersing in the characters. His stories they weren't so worthy. They were a little bit light, while there's still a rollicking adventure to happen. And that's what I like. And I've tried picking up some of the well-known, I won't name any, some of the well-known fantasy science fiction authors. And it just starts to feel like it's dragging on too much. It's trying to be, again, like I say, too worthy. But I find myself picking up some of those, middle grade YA. And it's not that I'm a bad reader, a poor reader. It's the suspending what you know. You can break down more barriers by allowing the world to just flow some more rather than trying to fix it into some rigidity. I think it's an interesting space to operate in.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of world building for you?
Yeah, there is. And I never really knew that I could build a world, but it turns out I'm not bad at it. Yeah, I like creating those maps. But I will point out I'm not, like I said before, can't draw. I'm really bad at it. I can draw a tree, like a fluffy tree. And there you go. And then a mountain like that. But
I can draw. I traditionally as a painter, drawer, artist, but I don't like the time that it takes. I want things to be a little more immediate. Certainly, if it's something like that to help inspire you. I don't want to have to spend my own inspiration trying to come up with something that's going to inspire me again later. I have found for your maps a platform called incarnate.com. It's basically for being able to design fantasy maps all with little icons. It's amazing. It's an amazing tool. I used it to build the map for the world of my own story. So Incarnate with a K, I believe it is. I think everyone should look that up and you should have a go at it.
Yeah, that does sound helpful because my hope is for each book there will be a map. So I have one in the first book, but I want to keep it going because one thing I like about books is when they show you a map at the beginning and you can see the path that the character is taking. And so I want to include that in my books because I just think it's helpful to know where everyone's going, especially when you just entered this new world, you don't know the places. So it's better to like look back and be like, okay, I now know where they are now.
Yes, if you're talking modern fiction and it's set in Chicago, for example, people can understand. I know what that city might be like, even if they've never been there. They can look it up on Google Maps if they needed to. But when you're creating a fantasy world and there are distances to travel and you want people to understand the relationship between these geography points, a map is absolutely going to help. I found that when I was creating the map to fulfill the story that I was writing, I actually then was also thinking of what's going to happen in future stories and dropping in those parts of the map as well as, again, lots of little Easter eggs for people to pore over and find and discover that might be mentioned in the story even if they don't go there. Maps are a great way of fleshing out a world, but also fleshing out the story that takes place in that world.
Yeah, that's very true. It's also can be a little frustrating when you're trying to figure out timing, like how long it's going to take. And I was like, well, it's going to take them a couple days. I was like, maybe not.
Mhm.
It needs to take a little longer.
Because otherwise you just create a plot hole, right? You create a plot hole in which you said, oh, the characters took a day to get from here to here, but everyone else it takes 7 days. Why? Why is?
They're very fast horses. Very.
So you've self-published Oriana's
Yeah.
Legacy. I want to ask about self-publishing. I know it's a question for a lot in our community, whether to self-publish or do what's called traditional publishing. And the very name traditional publishing, I use the air quotes, traditional publishing, it just intimates the industry as being stuck in old ways, possibly outdated ways that prevent new voices from finding their audience. Whereas self-publishing has exploded a lot in the last few years, but it's not all it's cracked up to be. So why did you choose self-publishing over traditional? Did you try traditional? And how did you find the experience?
So when I first started writing, I always thought of being like a traditional publisher. That was always the goal. But I think I was mentioned before, I didn't have a lot of confidence in my writing. And every time I tried to look for some type of literary agent or where to go, there was so much to do to be able to get in there. And they would say like, it'll be about 2-3 months until we let you know. And it was just like, I've waited so long to do this. I don't want to wait another 3 months to find out, it's not good enough for us, you know? And maybe they would have liked it, but there was a good chance they wouldn't. And so I just really wanted to get Oriana's Legacy out there. I wanted to share it. I didn't know if people were going to want to read it or not, but I still wanted to just get it out there. And so I decided self-publishing is the way to go. Suffice to say, though, I didn't actually know how much work it was going to take. So it does take a lot of time and effort, and it can be exhausting. You have to find your own editors, your proofreaders, cover artists. The list goes on. And not only that, but you have to do your own marketing. I mean, I had to get Instagram. As you can tell, I'm relatively new to it. But overall, the day that I actually pushed the button to make it official was amazing. I felt so accomplished, and it felt so good. And I remember telling like my family members about it and my mom about it, and my mom was like, my daughter's an author. And I was like, yeah, I am. Like, I actually am. I did this. And it felt great to do it. But I will warn people that if you want to do self-publishing, it's very stressful. There's a lot to do. And there will be moments where you want to stop. Like you want to be done. But I'll just say, keep pushing. If you want people to read your work, keep pushing. It's worth it. It's worth to, even if you just get 10 people to look at it, at least 10 people looked at it. So, and people read it. And I've had people read my book now, and they've told me like, I couldn't even put it down. And I almost started crying.
Yeah.
I was just so happy that actually happened.
I've heard that a lot from people, the idea that self-publishing, it's removed a lot of the barriers of obviously the pathway through traditional publishing, the barriers obviously of trying to find an agent, that it's so time consuming. I myself had one round of looking for a literary agent, and you go through that, and it's an exhaustive process, and then you're sitting back and you're waiting and waiting and waiting. And while you're waiting, you're working on the next project and so forth. But it's hard to focus on that next project when you're starting to lose confidence in that first one. You're thinking, if no one wants it, then why bother with the second one? Maybe I should start a whole new project, for example. And then, you might get some feedback. And I had some positive feedback, but still no one picked it up. And then when I started the second round of looking, I was focusing in the UK then. When I started the second round of focusing in the US, doing a lot more research this time, it's even more exhausting, because they talk about how you need to do your research quite exhaustively. By the time you finish all that research and put together your list of potential agents to go and query, that takes so long. But by the time you get to do the querying, they've now shut their doors. They're no longer looking for it, and so you're going to start again. And so it's this endless cycle of trying to do the research and stay on top of the timing of things. Because that's the other problem, is they don't have just an open portal for submissions. They'll have windows, and only there's one publisher that does 1 day each year just one day they open for submissions, and they go, we're not open for the rest of the year. And it's almost like they're getting that swell. They're trying to build hype, but now what they've done is they've created a problem in that for the rest of the year, there are people who are needing to find a publisher who will go somewhere else because they've shut their doors for 11 months, 12 months. And then obviously the problem is once you do find one, they'll help you. They'll take off a lot of those challenges, remove some of those obstacles, but now they'll bring in an editor who will then go through and start to change your story. And you might be thinking, oh, I can't sacrifice that particular scene. And I know it might not seem important for this book, but it's going to be important for the next one or for the greater narrative. And so that's why, again, you go the self-publishing route. You can take control of the story more, but the downside is all that marketing. It's pretty easy to hit publish and have it appear there on Amazon.com, but you need people to know about it. So what have been your approaches for marketing?
So my big parts have been kind of just making posts on the things that I know, like Facebook. That's been my big thing. Sorry, I'm older. That's where we grew up on, is Facebook. But then I also moved into Instagram and just making posts, fun videos. And the other thing is I don't just do stuff about my book. A lot of what I do is about my book. But I do other things, like I do book recommendations of other books I've been reading. I try to do jokes with my dog because she hates books, which is great because I'm a writer and my dog hates books. But those are just like some things that I've been doing so far. And right now I'm doing a lot more research with Amazon and doing specific marketing on their platform. There's a lot that I don't know because I was a science educator, not in marketing, so it's a completely different ball game.
My career was in marketing, advertising, creative and advertising. I would recommend a little bit of paid social media, sponsored posts, choosing the right targeting. It's not expensive to at least dabble in it and see what kind of results you might get, and then keep upping the amount you spend on it if you're seeing a return. The trick is just remembering it's an investment, and you need there to be conversions. If you're thinking to yourself, I can spend this amount of money and that will equate to the same as if it was 5 books I gave away, then it's worth it.
Yeah, that sounds something like that's my next step too. I definitely do need to look more into that kind of thing. It's hard when you self-publish because, like I said, you take all of the money, like you're the one spending all of this money, and it's scary to think, because maybe I only sell 100 books and that's it, and that's not going to be enough to keep going with the series. So it's you trying to find the right pathway to go, especially with marketing, that's actually going to help your book, because you just don't want to throw money out there. You want to make sure that you're doing your research and checking to see what's going to work best for your book. You kind of mentioned that, but I will say I've had a lot of people come on DM me on Instagram being like, here, let me review your book, or let me do this with your book. And I've been like, great, but I don't think I could do that for just one review. I think I need to have more than that.
Yeah, I can give you a free book, but if you pass it on to the next reviewer as a bit of a pay it forward, that'd be wonderful.
Yes. Exactly.
And you're working on you're working on the second book, or you're working on some other projects?
So I'm just concentrating on the Crystalla Chronicles, but I am working on the second book. It's handwriting it right now, and handwriting it, and I think I only have a few more chapters to go, and it'll be done.
Wow.
And then I'll have to move on to my next, which is putting it onto the computer, then getting it edited, and then editing it myself, and then having some proofread, the whole steps that have to go along with it.
Okay, so handwriting a book, we're talking hundreds of pages. Why handwriting?
So again, I kind of mentioned before, but slowing down is important for me. So taking my time and making sure that I'm growing the characters that I want, how I want them to be done. And it like I said before, it helps me figure out those plot holes and make sure that I'm not making those mistakes. When I type really fast and I go through things, and it's almost like robotic. and that when I write, it's more me thinking things through. I also draw things out when I write. So when I'm trying to explain the surroundings, I'll draw it out. Not very well, but I'll draw it out and then try to explain it in my writing. And fight scenes too. This is kind of embarrassing to say, but I'll actually practice the fight scenes myself and try to act it out and then write it down. I don't know if I should have admitted that, but
well, look, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure there's a level of realism to what's going on. Okay, so you can at least picture the fight in your head and kind of go, somebody's coming from this side. How could I respond to that? What might be again a dramatic moment in that? There's an obstacle, something that prevents me from being able to defend myself. So look, there's nothing wrong with acting it out.
I make sure no one's around. So.
No. Look, by the same token, anybody who's writing something that's set in a real-world scenario, go and walk those streets. I wrote a short fiction piece just last week, all set in Hamburg. I've never been to Hamburg. I don't know why I landed on Hamburg as the location, but I was doing guided tours online and walking the streets on Google Maps to understand the space, because I didn't want anybody who might have been to Hamburg to go, hang on, you can't turn left there and see a theatre. I needed the geography to be right. So yeah, you need to do these things to explore the spaces that you're creating. In the handwriting, I suppose, you're also preventing yourself from self-editing as you go.
Yeah.
It's all internal rather than
Yeah.
if you're typing, it's very easy to go, do I hate?
Yeah. It's funny, someone was looking at my notebook at one point because I showed it to them, and they're like, this is very like clean. And I was like, oh, you haven't gotten to this one section where I was like, processing stuff. But yeah, I think that's one thing that I'm keeping. Make some notes in it, being like, I need to add this, but I don't have room to add this, so I'm going to add it when I transfer it over to the computer. So I'll make notes like that, or I'll underline or circle things like I need to remember, so that we don't forget. There was one point in my first book, so in Oriana's Legacy, I was trying to remember the age. And I don't know why. And so at one point, my editor was like, you do know that you changed it like 3 times. I was like, no, but I will fix it.
Are you keeping side notes of these sorts of things? Like, I mean, as I'm going through and introducing new characters, I have to keep and write a little character profile on them so I can refer back, and so I don't end up with those problems.
Yes, I actually do. I have a board, and I've been, just like on printer paper, I've been writing down important notes, like places, locations, symbols that I've been using, because I'll make a symbol up, and then I'll forget that I made that symbol. So I'm like, no, I need to remember this. This is important. But yeah, you never really think about that until you actually write it all out.
Yeah, I have a space here for writing in, but what I don't have is a big wall to be able to pin up everything and put on your little references, and almost like in the films where you're tracing red string around things to connect the dots. I think that's kind of what writers need to do, because otherwise you will get lost in your own head.
Yeah, it's very true. I think editors probably know this, but I'm sure eye color of people change so many times in books when you're editing. It's just, no one can keep track. But I am lucky that Oriana, I kind of made her a very specific looking type of character. And so I don't ever change her eye color, because she has a very fancy eye color. Not fancy. Okay. No one else in the book has her eye color. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to read it to find out.
So what's the title of the second book? Can you share?
I don't have a title yet.
Oh, it's going to be Oriana's something, surely.
I've been, titles are hard. So Oriana's Legacy, I don't know how I was able to just come up with that out of no, like it happened. I was like, yes. But with this next book, I've been writing different titles for it, and I was like, none of these work. None of these are good enough. So I'm still working on that. I can tell you that there will be, I'll mention it, the occasions will play a big role in the second book. So if any of you have read Oriana's Legacy or want to read Oriana's Legacy, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Alrighty. Look, I think we'll probably start to close out now, if that's okay. Is there anything more you... Okay. So firstly, I'd like to thank Mila Velimirovic for telling us her story and telling us about her stories, certainly about Oriana's Legacy. It's available on Amazon.com for anybody who's listening. I'm still waiting for mine. You'll be doing the next Pass the Baton interview with DC Gomez, I believe.
I believe so.
The 26th one on May the 7th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for anybody who wants to join that one as well. I'd like to invite everybody who's listening to participate in the Word Improv Challenges, where you get to learn new words and hone your writing skills. To do that, simply follow Word Sleuth on Instagram. And for anyone who's already participating in the Word Improvs, if you want to be part of these Pass the Baton interview series, just DM Word Sleuth on Insta and put yourself forward, and they'll work you into a schedule. Now, don't forget, these live Instagram interviews are also available as a podcast on Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. Everyone just search for Word Sleuth to find them, including episode 24, which is my one. Lastly, I'd like to ask everyone to follow Mila on Instagram. It's at author Milav. That's author Milav. To support her and stay up to date with her journey and with Oriana's Legacy and what Oriana's doing next. I also want to thank Catherine Nesbitt for joining us today, standing in case things went down at my end. In case anyone's wondering what's Catherine doing there, it's in case there's a glitch in the matrix and I'm dropped out. Catherine can be found on Instagram at Catherine Y Nesbitt. That's Catherine with a K .Y Nesbitt. And I'm M.A. Batten. You can follow me on Insta at Mr. Chicken Films. That's Mr.Chicken_films. Or discover my writing projects at www.mabatten.com. I think that's it for everybody. I want to thank you again for your time. Thanks everyone for listening. Oh, are there any questions? We do have some time. Are there any questions? I haven't been watching down the bottom here. Is there any questions? There's a lot of people who've joined, which is nice.
I just saw people saying hello and talking about what a wonderful interview it was. If I could ask a question,
sure.
It would just be to you. What was your inspiration behind this epic, very intense 7-book series? That obviously came from somewhere, like.
Yeah, so I will admit, so I've always been a tomboy, and I always loved reading stories about strong female leads, but I didn't have a lot when I was my age, like not my age, when I was little.
Right.
There was one story that I read, it's by Tamora Pierce, The Song of the Lioness, where there's a young woman who pretends to be a knight, and she has to pretend to be a boy in order to do this. And so a part of that inspiration comes from that, because I wanted a strong female character, but in this case I didn't want her to have to hide her true self. So this is a little different, where she's completely out there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So she's not the perfect hero, everyone. She's like the rest of us. She has her issues, but she's working through them as we go on. Another one is, I am an avid gamer. I love video games. Final Fantasy, Zelda, all those things. I have to admit that they're close to my heart. If I'm not reading, I'm gaming. But also part of the inspiration comes from Zelda, specifically Link. And I just wanted to have a female character that was like Link, except that she talks. So I'm just saying, if Nintendo, you're listening, which you're probably not, do not. If you're gonna make a movie with Zelda, do not let Link talk. Do not let her have it. He's not supposed to talk. Sorry. But yeah, I just wanted that kind of character. Strong, has her issues, but she's fighting her way through it, and she's working to try to save the world, even though she's still a young teenager trying to figure herself out. So
that's fantastic. Is there anybody you want to thank, who's been really supportive of your work, or just encouraging, or, just shout out to your mom?
Actually, so one fun fact about myself is that my parents were both immigrants. So they came from Eastern Europe, from the Czech Republic and Poland. Go Poland and the Czech Republic. And my mom actually moved here. My dad passed away when I was very young, and she raised 5 children and a Newfie, which is a very big dog, all by herself, all alone, not a lot of English, but yet she did it. And throughout this whole time, she worked so hard to make me and my brothers and sisters have good lives. And she was always pushing us to do what we love. And she's always been there for me, supporting me the whole time. And I actually wrote a little note in the book that you can look at that's just for her. She's an amazing woman. And I also should probably do a shout out to my husband, because he might be sad if I don't. He's also been a big support to me too. I remember the first day I went to him. So after I left my teaching career as a biology teacher, I went to him and I said, I think I'm going to write Oriana's Legacy. Like, I think I'm actually going to get it published. And he was like, do it. Like, not even, he's like, you go do it. And then he would always be telling me, like, have you been writing? Have you been writing your book? You need to keep writing your book. Like, I get off that video game and go write your book. So he's been a great support, and I couldn't have done it without him. And also all my family and friends out there, you've all been amazing. And I would never have, Oriana's Legacy would never have been real except without you guys supporting me and giving me your love. So thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Mila. Thank you, everyone who's watching and listening. See you again soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.